All right, so today's presentation is called Meaningful Representation in Choral Music in the Classroom by Dr. Shantae Pittman. Dr. Pittman is the choral director in Campbell High School in Atlanta, Georgia, and is a, a teacher leader in her field and is also adjunct. She works with the Georgia College and State University Master of Music Education program and is very highly qualified to teach us in this area. Thank you, Dr. Pittman.
Of course, of course. Thank you all so much for having me today. I wanted to touch on a couple of things, meaningful representation in choral music and in the classroom. Um, we had a presentation last year that I kind of wanted to combine with the topic of choosing choral repertoire in the classroom that really represents the students that you have. So, we're gonna get right into it. A little bit of session norms, just making sure that you're listening respectfully with open mind and full attention. This is a safe space, so allow for vulnerability and feelings of discomfort, and understanding the experiences of others, and know that everything will not be solved today. But if you do have questions, I'm more than willing to answer those. So, some words to inspire you. To love all children, we must struggle together. To create the schools we are taught to believe are impossible, schools must be built on justice, love, joy, and anti-racism. And that's by Dr. Bettina Love, who is a education professor at the University of Georgia. So, who I am. I am 35 years old. Wow, I'm saying that, but I just had a birthday. Millennial, I am neurodivergent, so my brain is all over the place all of the time. I'm thinking of all of the things right now. 13-year music educator, doctor of music education from the University of Georgia. I am a music consultant, music ed consultant, social justice activist, abolitionist teacher, music equity advocate, daughter of Cheryl and Sam, sister of Tawana and India, mom of Sebastian, who is being good right now, which is great, and Black cis hetero female human. So I am a lovely mixed box of chocolates there. Who I was then, a curious, loving, avid reader, creative, musical, artistic, gifted Black girl. So that's little me at second grade. So, the power of a great teacher. I've had 25 music teachers, mentors in my life, and I remember every single one of their names. They made space for me as a curious little Black girl with a big voice who had a lot to say and a lot of questions to ask. I definitely got in trouble for asking a lot of questions, surprisingly. It wasn't until I was in kindergarten and I used to help my classmates with their work when they finished. And I, I wouldn't have anything to do. I wanted to help. I wanted to, be that helpful person. And I would get in trouble for that. And so after a while, my teacher finally realized, well, she's finishing her work extra early. Maybe we should get her tested for gifted. And lo and behold, I tested for gifted in kindergarten class, and then I started to go into the gifted resource. So that kind of pushed me into the teaching field. I started to want to be a teacher at that point in time. So that's how I knew. That's how I knew there. But again, you have the power to change students' lives. Good teachers matter. So you'll have students who look like me, or identify as students that have often been marginalized, Black and brown children, children of LGBTQ identity, and things of that nature. And in their voices in music spaces have been muted or dismissed, very, very heavily over the past few decades, centuries even, in music education. But now is the time. Um, now is the time to move forward. Now is the time to make sure all of those voices are heard and present. And we've started to move in the right direction, which is fantastic. So, in public education today, national data reports that 50% of student populations in public schools is students of color. And so the US teacher workforce right now is 80% white and about 20% non white identifying teachers. So there is a disparity there between who the children are seeing in the classroom. So there's a brief moment to reflect. Write down one situation during your time teaching or student teaching where you may have felt out of your element or insensitive regarding students in your classroom that are often marginalized. It says 5 minutes to reflect, but Robin, we won't have to take all 5 minutes. We'll just wait on you. We'll wait on you to reflect. You don't have to type in the chat unless you just want to. But if you're willing to type in the chat and then I can find where the chat is and I will talk about that if you would like. But no pressure, no pressure. But I'll give you a couple minutes.
Dr. Pittman, I can read hers in the chat and I can also share one if you don't mind.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I don't see anything in the chat. So, oh wait, here it is. Yes. Yay. Okay, so Robin said that she's a first year teacher and felt like she was ready to go. But the first time she saw her students, she was trying to figure out what she needed to do to help them, and she didn't know where they started.
Hmm.
So mine actually was during my student teaching way back in the way back when I student taught at Oak Hill Middle School with Gina Ray and middle school general music.
Hmm.
And we taught a section in the general music class on piano. So we did a week of right hand, a week of left hand, and then we moved to hands together. So we taught the week of right hand and everything was great. And then starting the week of left hand, I have this little cutie little girl. She raises her hand. She's like, Mrs. Davis, can I play the left hand parts with my right hand? And I was like, no, why would you even think that's okay? And that child lifted up her left hand. She said, because I don't have any fingers on my left hand.
Mm-hmm.
So that changed things substantially, and she did fine. We never did get hands together though.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Robin, I definitely totally understand where you're coming from. I always whenever I go into a new situation, I have been at three schools. Luckily, have had substantial time at those schools, but every single time I start at the ground floor, I start in the basement because you never know who you're going to meet. You might have some students who have had 3 years. If you're teaching high school, they've had 3 years of really outstanding choral music experience. You might have some students who they were in chorus, but they weren't really digging into chorus, so they might not have the best technique. You might have brand new students to you who are just in there because their friends are in there and they're like, I think I might want to try this. So you are always with a mixed bag, but I always try to start at the ground floor And this is with everything: music, music technique, music theory, all of those things. I want to start at the ground floor and start to try to build them up. And then if they progress faster through the concepts, then that's great for them. But I don't ever want to think that I know where they are, because I don't. I'm not a mind reader. And you want to just make sure that you catch people. You want to catch people who might have fallen in the gap or missed a concept or things of that nature. So you just want to make sure that we're all on the right same sheet of music, as they like to say. And for Tina, oh, that's crazy. That is such a not funny, not funny, but it's a funny situation now that you look back on it, I'm sure. But definitely making sure that we're cognizant of differences, and especially now you are the queen of that, especially. But definitely making sure that we are mindful of the things that we say and of our students, and taking into account of the differences that we may or may not see in our students every day, because our students now have a lot going on, a lot more, I would say a lot more than I had going on at their age, but they're still kids. They're still kids, albeit COVID has changed all of our brains, but but they're still kids nonetheless. So, we want to disrupt the system and spark joy for all of your musicians. We want to spark that joy. So, we have to do a little bit of the inner work with implicit and unconscious bias. So when we are unconsciously biased, we automatically have some inner things that we think about a certain type of person, or a certain thing that a person does. You know, if a student comes into class and they're just loud and really raucous and things of that nature, we think, oh, they're the bad child. That's an unconscious bias. Honestly, it probably could just be a cultural thing where they're very animated when they have conversations with others. Me personally, I talk with my hands. So some people consider that to be a little bit of aggressiveness, actually. And we have to be mindful of those things. We have to be careful to make sure that we're giving all of our students a clean slate, and not just a clean slate at the beginning of the year, but a clean slate daily. Especially with the frontal lobe not being developed for a very long time. Some of the things that our students do in the classroom, even though it drives us up the wall and gives us several gray hairs, like the ones that are coming up in my temple, we have to make sure that we're giving them grace. However, creating those boundaries, and helping them understand the rules of the land and the rules of school. So this is just a quick video about unconscious biases. Um, on YouTube, and I think hopefully it'll play. Yay. And there's my
Without
dog.
us realizing it, our brains can sabotage our own thinking. Instead of thinking clearly, our mind can simply close itself off. Luckily, there's a way to see the bigger picture. If you're aware of these blocks, sometimes called cognitive or unconscious biases, you can address them. This is particularly helpful when you're working with others to make important decisions. There are many unconscious biases. We are going to highlight 6 of the most common ones so that you can identify and work around them. The first bias is anchoring bias. The first or last piece of information you hear or see can create a lasting memory. We tend to remember this information, even if it's not the most useful or relevant piece of information that we have received. The second bias is the bandwagon effect, sometimes called groupthink. When many people take one position, you might feel like you should join them, even if their views don't align with yours. Be clear on your own position and be wary of getting swept along. The third bias is blind spot bias. We all have our blind spots, but they're much easier to recognize in others than in ourselves. To address this, encourage others to watch for your blind spots and you can watch for theirs. The fourth bias is confirmation bias. We're comfortable with what we know and tend to approach new information with fixed ideas. We're more likely to accept information that supports and reject information that contradicts our world view. This may lead us to stereotype those with a different viewpoint. This is perhaps the strongest bias and the most common, so watch closely for this one. The fifth bias is information bias. Often, when we're in a group, we think we need more information before we can make a decision. Sometimes it's necessary, sometimes it's not. People can often make more accurate decisions with less information. Check that additional information is essential. Delaying a decision for too long while you seek more information is a common sign of this bias. The sixth and final bias is the authority or anti-authority bias. Some of us defer to authority figures. If this person holds an important position, they must be right. On the flip side, some of us disregard anything a person in authority says because we have a low level of trust in experts. Either way, your job is to interrogate the evidence and look closely at the facts, not judge the person stating them. Critical thinking skills can help you do that. Remember, there are many types of biases. These are just 6 that we often see when groups work together. Your job is to spot the bias in others and yourself. If we can all do that, we'll make better decisions together.
So, how to translate that to the classroom? So, you want to make sure that your classroom and repertoire choices are student centered. So, we have to understand our students and build those relationships. So, we have to examine everything in our classroom. Um, our syllabus is the language inclusive? I spent a lot of time during COVID or during the hybrid COVID teaching process going over every single thing um, that I would give out to my students. Um, Am I using gender neutral language? Am I using language to include all types of home family lifestyles? Instead of just saying parents, I say parents, guardians, and caregivers now on everything. And I know, I know some of my parents and guardians do realize that and notice it. But sometimes every family is not the same makeup, same nuclear family structure. So you have a lot of grandparents who are the main caretaker of the child, or older siblings who are the caretakers of the child. So just being mindful about that, because sometimes some things have happened where the parents are not the primary caregiver, or parents have passed away and things of that nature. So just being sensitive to that. Uniform requirements. Are your uniforms inclusive? Do you have non-binary students who would prefer to not wear the dress, or non-binary students or trans students who want to wear the dress, or the pants? Do you have uniform requirements that would suit or be sustainable for all of your students? Chorus fees. Is this a barrier for student participation? When you're doing something that's during school, that's co-curricular, it can't be a barrier. But you do still want every student to have all of those opportunities. So you have to make a way, uh, always making a way out of no way for all of your students. And examine everything. So, recruitment, how are you recruiting your students? Are you going down to your middle schools? Are you going down to the elementary school, depending on what level? Are you doing school level recruitment? Do you let your students recruit? and they are the best recruitment method actually, because they talk about your program. The students usually want to know what the students think about the program or about Dr. Pittman in this case. So how are you recruiting? Are you looking at a certain type of student to join your program? And things of that nature. So just examine all of those things. Concert programming. I've said this before, but not just old dead white guys. We'll talk about some good concert programming. There's another slide a little later. All state and honor choir participation. This has been a huge thing coming up in a lot of music ed circles, about all state honor choir participation and diversifying who makes up those honor bands or honor choirs. So, what are the barriers that are preventing marginalized students from participating? These are the students who are at Title I schools. And Title I schools exist in all types of school settings, especially in public education. So, you have Title I schools that exist in rural schools, suburban schools, and inner city urban schools as well. So, when we want to be mindful when we're using the word Title One, because it kind of in the past, at least the past decade or two, been kind of a catch-all for a certain demographic or racial makeup of students, but that's not the case. There are Title One schools everywhere, and a lot of times the main barrier for a lot of those students is um, that $25 registration fee. And so what I've done in my program is had students to sign up for a all-state audition scholarship. And so the booster would pay, I think this year we paid for two all-state registration scholarships for those students who would be very good on would do very well on the audition process, and who are dedicated to making sure that they're learning all of their music, practicing daily, on those things. So just the small things like that. Overnight trips. Are we making this trip accessible to all? Um, we got to know our audience and know, that maybe that trip to Hawaii might not necessarily be what we need to do for our student clientele, simply because, the families are, some of our parents are working 2 and 3 jobs, or students, they have to work, or, the fundraising options aren't there, or your parents or families aren't fundraisers. That happens a lot. So, are we making the trip accessible to all? Are we thinking about making these trips the um, most financially and fiscally responsible things for our families? So I mentioned about this earlier, and I said more on concert rep choices. So this has been a huge thing happening in choral music specifically, where there's been debate and back and forth about concert rep choices now. So making sure that we have um, many more opportunities for students to see themselves. On the flip side, though, um, there's been some talk about mirrors versus windows. So when they talk about mirrors, the repertoire that we use in our classroom should be representative of the students that we have in the classroom, and not just on the surface level. So not just saying composers that are women, or composers who are female, um, or composers who are Black or Hispanic, or those things of that nature, but also a little bit more in depth, those things that are beyond the surface. So students who are music by students who, but excuse me, music, music by composers who are of the LGBTQ community, or um, music by composers who are, differently abled, or neurodivergent, because our students are those things as well. And also, we should have concert rep that offers an opportunity to be a window to other experiences, a window to different things in different places, world music especially, but making sure that it's done well and not appropriated, but appreciated. Um, there's been a lot of conversation about appropriation versus appreciation, and how a choir of maybe 100% white students performing, world music, um, either South African music or even American music, spirituals, and how they perform it and their performance practice. There's always questions about the best performance practices of that music and wanting to be authentic, but wanting to, make sure they're doing it justice. Um, but I want to say either Dr. Andre Thomas or Dr. Antoine Armstrong at St. Olaf said that because we're not people of the original, the original intent of the spiritual, it's not possible for us to authentically perform it. Even those of us who wear the culture of of the music, we can't authentically perform it either because we were not in that space and during that time performing this music. We can only seek to appreciate the music and perform it to the best of our knowledge with the best intention. And so we have to be mindful of um, how we approach music from different backgrounds, from different cultures. And it ultimately, if we aren't, familiar with it, we have to study on it. There's tons of resources about teaching spirituals in the classroom. Dr. Thomas has a actual book, a whole book on it of concert, teaching concert spirituals. Also, there's music, a new book by Dr. Marcus Garrett about Black music and Black composers of non-idiomatic music, meaning music outside of just the concert spiritual. There's ballads, there's, things that are based off of Renaissance pieces and short opera works and things of that nature. So just opening our eyes um, to more than just the spiritual as the piece that's by the Black composer. And also, one pet peeve about spirituals being programmed, especially, is it being referenced as the fun piece and it always being put at the end of a concert. That's been something that has been mentioned in several different spaces. It's like it's a time and a place, but you have to be mindful that sometimes the text does not mean fun. Although the text and the presentation of the text might be exciting, the text itself might not lend itself to actually be called fun. So we just have to be mindful about that. I've had several conversations about that, especially on the honor choir circuit, when clinicians would say, "Oh, and this is our fun piece," and I'm like, "No, no, this is talking about getting away from their slave master and following the drinking gourd, like some stuff like that, and so I'm just like, let's be mindful of our language when we're talking about these pieces of music, because a lot of times they don't know any better, but once you know better, you have to do better. So that's the challenge. All right, some things about classroom management. Yay. So, I think I'm going to start off here. So, choosing your soloist. Don't play favorites. I've done that. No, yeah, I've done that before, or that's been done to me, where students are not necessarily the best person singing the solo or doing the solo, and then that comes back to bite me. That comes back to bite me. So definitely make sure that you're choosing soloists who are you're spreading the love, I guess you would say, spreading the love across the room. Microaggressions. How can we work on this? This is another thing about inner work, and we have a little video about that. And then correcting negative behaviors in students. You want to make sure that you're showing up for your marginalized students. and shut down any negative or aggressive behavior. This could be in the form of bullying. I have non binary and trans students in my program, and I do not allow for any type of misgendering, any type of dead naming, anything of that nature. I'm very, very protective of those students, because it's a very, very, very trying time in their lives. And I don't want my classroom to not be a safe space. Definitely always want to have a safe space for all of our children. Um, and I aim to create that community of mutual respect across all different types of students who may be marginalized. So here's our video.
For people who still don't think that microaggressions are a problem,
Oh, you're so well spoken.
oh, just imagine instead of being a stupid comment, a microaggression is a mosquito bite.
Ugh, it's a compliment.
Mosquito bites and our itch are one of nature's most annoying features. But if you're only bitten every once in a while,
No, where are you really from?
Cleveland.
sure, it's annoying, but it's not that big a deal. The problem is that some people get bitten by mosquitoes a lot more than other people. I mean, a lot more. Whether it's on a date,
Oh, your English is so good.
Excuse me?
going grocery shopping,
You know, everything happens for a reason.
I'm just buying apples.
commuting to work,
So when are you gonna have a baby?
watching TV,
We have to keep the Redskins name part of our culture and history.
or just walking down the street with your partner.
I couldn't even tell you were gay.
Mosquitoes seem to pop up everywhere.
You, John, you shopping at my fabulous share too.
And getting bit by mosquitoes every goddamn day,
Touch your hair.
multiple times a day,
Pretty, can I
Can I
touch
touch
your
it,
hair?
Can I?
is fucking annoying. It makes you want to go ballistic on those mosquitoes. It seems like a huge overreaction to people who only get bit every once in a while.
It's just a mosquito bite. Who cares?
Just another angry black woman.
Of course, beyond just being annoying, some mosquitoes carry truly threatening diseases that can mess up your life for years.
Astrophysics? Maybe you should try this challenging major.
Ow, your dreams.
And other mosquitoes carry strains that can even kill you.
It looked like he was up to trouble, okay? I felt threatened.
So next time you think someone's overreacting, just remember, some people experience mosquito bites all the time.
You're all so exotic. Wow.
And by mosquito bites, we mean microaggression.
So personally, as a black woman, in the classroom, I am hyper sensitive and hyper aware of microaggressions. Um, and sometimes it becomes a bit overwhelming at times moving in the music education landscape. But I've grown to definitely make sure that I speak out um on my own accord, because it's just um that stuff, like they said, it can definitely wear on you, and it can wear on students too, and sometimes they don't even realize that some of the things that they say are a little bit aggressive, and other people, they account microaggressions as paper cuts. um and you just keep getting paper cuts, and you don't even realize that they're affecting you in any type of way until you start you find yourself touching something that stings, that causes a pain reaction. Others, when I've read about microaggressions, completely eliminates the word micro. It's just aggression. Can I touch your hair? Or not even asking to touch your hair, just touching my hair. And that's happened, and things of that nature. So it's just a matter of being mindful and being cognizant, and also relaying that into the classroom and trying to help and teach our students to be more aware and cognizant of how they are interacting in the classroom. COVID has changed the social landscape, of a lot of things for our students. They spent a lot of time when they were on COVID lockdown on social media. And so, again, like I said, that's changed everyone's brains, but it's definitely affected our students. Um, we're finally starting to get to some sort of normalcy back into our regular routine. Um, but we're probably going to see a difference in our students going forward. So we have a moment to reflect. I'm wondering if I can type this, or Tina, if you could type the Padlet link into the chat there. But we're going to use the Padlet response, I think, to each classroom scenario with your best solution, or we can just type it in the chat. That would be fine. You can type your response in the chat, and then we'll just go through scenario by scenario, so we don't have to use Padlet. So, classroom scenario number 1. At the beginning of class, um, you have a student who says they have something to tell you at the end of class. The student tells you that they think they are gay. How do you respond and affirm your student? So it'll take a few moments to respond, and you can just type in the chat. It's fine. And then I'll also share out to you. I love it. Say okay. hmm hmm Yeah, so we got okays, definitely got okays. And I would keep going and not think of them differently. Absolutely. Um, it's always an honor when students choose me to come out to. A lot of times they come out to me before they several months, sometimes even years before they come out to their parents. And I always think of it as an honor simply because they feel safe with you. And that kind of definitely continues to build that community in your classroom. Um, I definitely talk to students to make sure, and I'm like, okay, so if do your parents know, and things of that nature, because I wind up seeing and speaking with these parents much more frequently than the regular classroom teacher. So I want to make sure that I'm respecting the students, and not causing any type of issues in the classroom or in the home, when talking to them, especially also with trans students, and making sure that I'm addressing them appropriately to their parents as well. Classroom scenario number 2. So you begin to prepare a piece of music in your class, and as you begin um, rehearsing, it, there's a typo there. Your student remarks that the piece is problematic, and with some research, you confirm their suspicions. What do you do? All right. So in the chat, we got use the mistake as a discussion topic on representation, then replace it with a more appropriate piece. That's exactly what I would do. And then I would make the students know about the mistake and then replace the piece with something that is appropriate for them. Absolutely. Um, there are some pieces on our LGPE list that are problematic. Either the text is problematic or the melody that the piece was based off of, or songs, minstrel songs. And I've brought this up to a couple of people in leadership, especially when it regards to LGPE lists and things of that nature. And just making sure that people are aware of those things. Because if we don't make ourselves knowledgeable about that, then of course we find ourselves in really bad situations like this scenario. Our elementary colleagues have been doing a lot of this work, going through those anthologies of books and going through and making sure that the songs are affirming and not built on or based upon songs and stories that used to be very demeaning of a certain type of person or a certain ethnic group or culture of person. And so a lot of the things that we grew up on and a lot of the songs that we know by rote memory as those core memories are things that weren't appropriate and should have never been taught in a classroom to begin with. And so sometimes we're gonna have to start detaching ourselves from our memories. It's like, but I used to love that song. Yes, but that song is problematic. That song is problematic. It should never have been originally taught anyway. So definitely some good work happening. All right, classroom scenario number 3. You have an extremely bright and talented student who you believe should audition for an honor ensemble. They tell you they cannot afford the registration fee. So, how do you affirm this student in your classroom? And we talked about this a little bit earlier. Awesome. So, we got some who would love to find a scholarship for their students or sponsor for them. And this is definitely something that I've done. I have, even as a younger student, paid for students to go to honor ensembles or we fundraise. And I basically, at this point, we fundraise to make sure that our students are able to participate. Um, Again, it goes back to breaking down those barriers for our students and making sure that arbitrary things don't prevent students from participating in these sometimes life-changing experiences. I've had several students over the past 5 or so years tell me how life-changing Allstate was, or how amazing District Honor Course was. And, these are students who any other situation wouldn't have been able to afford it simply because they couldn't pay for it. And so of course I would love for all of the students to just go ahead and pay their $25, their $25 fee, but sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes that's dinner for a family. So I don't even really blink too much when when the time comes, the due date for the registration fee comes and goes, and only 7 out of the 14 of my students have paid. I speak to the children and ask, make sure things are okay and whatever, what have you. But I don't make it a big deal about it. I take care of it and handle it because those are the students who need that extra opportunity. Classroom scenario number 4. During some downtime in your class, downtime, you overhear students making fun of the color of another student's skin. What do you do? Hmm. Absolutely. So Robin said, I would stop and talk to the person that and let them know that what they said wasn't nice and that they needed to apologize because the classroom is a safe space. Absolutely. And Dr. D said, shut it down and develop a plan for a later lesson on classroom culture and or racial identity bias, etc. Absolutely. At different levels of education, the response should basically be the same, but sometimes it varies on the depth of it. I know definitely I've had that experience. I've had that experience. Um, you know, there's certain things that certain people say that you would look at others interestingly and be like, why in the world did you say that? So, I have a student who is of darker brown skin. And I had a student turn the lights off so that we could see what's on the projector. And a white student said, "Oh, where did so and so go?" as a joke on, because he's dark skinned, when turn the lights off, they can't see them. And I was like, oh, friend, oh, friend. So I had to shut it down immediately. And I was like, that is absolutely inappropriate. And it's interesting as well, dealing with those situations because students don't realize that some jokes and topics of that nature are very sensitive, and they think it's okay. But then when their friend who is the subject of the joke or the butt of the joke, when they get upset and things of that nature, the person who said the joke, they're always wondering why. I was like, well, if someone said something about how you look, something that you could not change, you can't scrub off, you can't just put a shirt over it, that hurts. That hurts deeply. And so definitely making sure that we're taking care of our students and creating that safe space. It's been some wild times in my classroom, I tell you. A moment to reflect again. So, remember that situation that you reflected on at the beginning of our presentation. So, how would you address that situation if it happens in your classroom now? Is this the same or different than how you originally handled your situation? And you can take a couple seconds and type in the chat. We love when our dog starts barking. All right, so going back to Dr. HG's um, experienced student teaching with a student who did not have those fingers on her left hand, she said that she would have reacted more calmly rather than to jump to conclusions. And that is absolutely, absolutely correct. A lot of times when you're teaching, reflection is going to be reflection on past practice and past situations is going to definitely help you move forward in a positive direction. And always don't don't be afraid to ask a mentor or a colleague about the situation and to gauge how they would handle things. Because sometimes, you don't have all the answers. So, having someone to confide in with those different things could definitely help out. So, sparking joy, what can you do as an ally or co-conspirator, as I like to use? Um, as a ally or co-conspirator, like I said, disrupt the system, be different than your colleagues when it comes to how you go through your choral music classroom. um, Choose those different people, choose those lesser known composers, choose that new piece of music. um, be the person who creates that safe space for your students. Some books that you could read on your journey is Stamped from the Beginning. A lot of these are heavy books, so take your time with these. So you want to talk about race? Why are all the Black kids sitting together in the cafeteria? It's a really good one by Dr. Tatum. How to how to become anti-racist. And we want to do more than just survive by Dr. Love. Lies my teacher told me. So many things. Blind Spot. Um, about the hidden biases of good people. And Blind Spot was a really good one, and it opened my eyes to a lot of things that happen to be in our blind spot. Even even as a Black woman, I had some blind spots that were ingrained in me. White Rage by Carol Anderson. How to talk so kids can learn about anti-racism and social justice. Culturally responsive teaching in music education. This book is a game changer, definitely a game changer for me in my practice. Culturally responsive choral music education by Julia T. Shaw, and Teaching with the Heart by Jason Max Ferdinand. As far as music repertoire and performance practice, there is the practical application of concert spirituals by Dr. Andre Thomas. And then, of course, there is the choral guide to Black musicians and composers by Dr. Marcus Garrett. And that's a recent publication. Dr. Garrett also has a basically lexicon of all types of Black composers of non-idiomatic music. So he on his website he has a list that you can go through and see all of the Black composers and their compositions posted there. So, any questions for me or comments? If you have them, you can jump on the mic or type in the chat. And if not, if not, I'll give you a couple of words to inspire, or leave you with a couple words to inspire. If you can get students to hope beyond what is typical of those around them, see it, feel it, sense it, then that gets them to take action. And that was Dr. Dante Dixon. So, this is my contact information. If you have any lingering questions, that's my phone number for my cell phone. Text, please. And my email address. And of course, social media. I'm on all of the socials. So I am at the Doc P on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I don't do much on TikTok because editing videos takes too long for me. So I lurk on TikTok and watch all the other TikTok famous people and music educators. But thank you again so much for all of your time and attention today, and thank you for inviting me to be here this afternoon. I sincerely enjoyed it. Sincerely enjoyed it. So anytime that you have any questions or even just want me to zoom in or pop in, I can do that. That's literally what I love to do. So
So much, Dr. Pittman, for sharing these things with us and helping us to be better teachers. Robin, do you have any questions or any comments that you would like to address with Dr. Pittman before we go?
oh, fun. Okay.
All right, so Robin thanks you. And then we will see you next time. Thank you so much for your time, and we will post this up on the knowledge box at the end of the semester so that other people can see it.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Have a good one.
Bye.